I stood there in the dim restaurant light, the hiss of my oxygen tank louder than the laughter coming from my own son's table. He didn't stand when I arrived, didn't offer a chair, just waved his wine glass and said, "Try not to trip over your machine, Mom." Maya giggled, called me the Terminator, and I smiled, quietly, because while they mocked the thing keeping me alive, they never imagined I'd learn to weaponize it, or that I'd turn off the machine they loved most, the one printing their comfort in my name. Alright, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor. Subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The restaurant was the kind with dim lighting and wine lists the length of novellas, where birthdays were whispered, not sung. Irene Walker adjusted the clear tubing resting behind her ears and exhaled slowly as she stepped into the dining room, the faint hiss of her oxygen tank breaking the hush like a misplaced instrument in an orchestra. Dylan didn't rise to greet her. He barely glanced up from his phone. Maya offered a thin-lipped smile as Irene shuffled toward the table. "We ordered the Pinot." "Hope. That's okay. You're not drinking." "Obviously. Obviously." Irene settled into the leather-cushioned seat, the portable tank quietly hissing by her feet. Her fingers lingered on the menu, though her appetite had already folded itself into the lining of her coat pocket with the cold. "Mom, you really should get a smaller model," Dylan said, motioning toward the tank like it offended the decor. "This one makes you look like what's the word? A walking machine," Maya offered sweetly, already scrolling through her phone. Clank, clank, clank. Here comes the Terminator. Laughter. Low, polished, and venom lace. Irene looked down at her napkin. She folded it in half. Then again. Then again. Her breathing stayed steady, controlled. It was not the machine making her seem robotic. It was them. At a nearby table, a couple paused mid-conversation. The woman offered a pitying smile. The man leaned closer to his date, whispering something with a glance Irene didn't miss. They were all watching, not the tank, her. "You don't need to be here if it's too much," Dylan added, voice coated in false concern. "No one would judge you for staying home with your equipment." Maya leaned forward, tapping her wine glass with a manicured nail. "Besides, these dinners are kind of lively. Not great for people who need, you know, a quiet beep to survive." Irene blinked once, slowly. Her eyes didn't water. "Not yet." "I'm fine," she said, voice calm, clipped. "Good. Because we're celebrating," Dylan said, raising his glass. "Promotion went through. Senior consultant, big deal." She lifted her glass of water, not in toast, but to sip. Ice clinked against the side. It sounded louder than it should have. As the meal unfolded, Irene let their barbs slide off her skin, but not from her memory. Each comment, each dismissive laugh, each sideways glance, she collected them, invisible as steam rising from her untouched salmon. When the check arrived, Dylan waved it away with a flourish. "Of course I've got it. I mean, Mom's technically retired now. Well, more like expired." Maya burst into laughter. Too loud. Several heads turned. Irene's breath hitched, just once. She stood slowly, hand steady on the table's edge. The machine at her side clicked faintly as it recalibrated. She didn't rush. She never would again. Outside, the air was crisp and unforgiving. Her breath mixed with the evening chill in visible bursts. The SUV's headlights flashed as Dylan unlocked it remotely without looking back. She didn't follow them immediately. Instead, she reached into her coat pocket, pulled out her phone, and saw one unread message. "Gloria, don't let them break you. You're not built to break." Irene's thumb hovered over the screen for a moment. Her reflection stared back at her in the black glass. Oxygen tube, weathered face, steady eyes. She whispered aloud, a vow spoken to no one and heard by everything. "I won't. I'll break them instead." Behind her, the restaurant hummed with warmth and laughter. Beside her, the oxygen tank released a soft exhale, but her mind was louder, sharper, recording, planning, remembering. She walked toward the curb, spine straightening with every step. In the rearview mirror of Dylan's SUV, she saw Maya checking her lipstick. They didn't see her watching. They never would. The oxygen tank let out its soft, cyclical hiss as Irene clicked through her emails at the kitchen table. Light from the overhead pendant spilling across yellowed paper and prescription bottles. It was just past 10 p.m. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that presses in on your ears. Outside, crickets chirped. Inside, something else buzzed. A new email notification. Subject: New statement available. Ever Air Medical Services. Total charges: $3,612.45. Her eyes narrowed. That couldn't be right. Irene knew her monthly costs to the dollar. Controlled, predictable, like everything else she fought to keep upright since her lungs betrayed her. She clicked open the full statement. There it was again. Ever Air Platinum Home Support Unit. $2,499 shipping address. 11,822 Grover Lane. Not her address. She exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that wasn't for survival, but for clarity. Grover Lane was Dylan's, his smug new construction home with the gray stone facade and that awful custom sign in the entryway. The Walkers. Established 2013. She leaned back in her chair, the vinyl cushion creaking beneath her. Her machine hissed again, this time in sync with her pulse. The doorbell rang. It was late for visitors, but she already knew who it would be. Nurse Tony Alvarez never came at predictable hours. He came when he knew she needed it most. Rough night? He asked, stepping inside with a polite nod and a familiar glance toward the tank. I need your eyes on something, Irene said, pushing the tablet toward him. Tell me I'm reading this wrong. Tony set his bag down and pulled a pair of reading glasses from his front pocket. He scanned the statement, lips tightening. This isn't your model, he said finally. The Platinum unit? That's high-end. For people doing in-home recovery with no mobility. Why would they send this to a place with stairs? Exactly, she said. Tony tapped the address field, then again on the billing code. And it's billed to your insurance, through your supplemental coverage. This isn't a mistake. This is fraud. Irene nodded slowly. Her hands were cold. You think he thought I wouldn't notice? She murmured. Tony looked up. He's not afraid of you. But he should be. She stood carefully, her hands braced against the table before straightening. Can you help me pull a billing history? I can do better. I can log into the portal and export everything they worked in silence for the next 30 minutes. Each new charge, filters, tanks, tubing, was legitimate until it wasn't. Then came the luxury unit, an upgrade never approved, a duplicate maintenance fee, and a second delivery to the same address on Grover Lane 3 months later. The machine beside her hummed low and even. She stared at it like it was something sacred. I carried this thing into a restaurant, she said quietly, and he laughed at it, mocked it, knowing he had one sitting pretty in his man cave, paid for by my breath. Tony looked up from the screen. That's not just theft. That's medical insurance fraud and elder abuse. I know, she said. There was no tremble in her voice now. She pulled out a yellow legal pad, the kind she'd used for decades in tax audits and budget meetings. Each line was a bullet point, every entry marked by date, charge, delivery location. Are you really doing this? Tony asked. No, Irene replied. I'm starting it. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and began sliding in printed records. The stack grew quickly. As Tony packed his bag, he looked back at her once more. If you need backup, I'll call, she said. But not yet. Right now, I need them to keep thinking I'm harmless. Tony nodded. He understood. She moved to her armchair after he left, folder balanced on her lap, the night silent once again. Her phone buzzed with a new message. Gloria, Gloria, you're not frail. You're loaded with ammunition. Lock and load, babe. Irene didn't smile, but her eyes gleamed. The sun hadn't fully risen, but Irene was already at her desk, the oxygen tank softly purring at her feet. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago. On her screen, the Ever Air insurance portal blinked its default blue, asking for yet another security code. She entered the code, then clicked Full. Billing history, download P, DFA progress bar crept forward. Irene's hands hovered, tense, over the mouse. File ready. She opened it. Every entry stared back like a confession. Serial numbers, addresses, approval codes, delivery receipts. For a moment, the room felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath with her. She scanned the list line by line until she found it. Patient name, Irene Walker. Shipping address, 11,822 Grover Lane. Equipment type, Platinum Home Oxygen Support. In-home unit authorized signer, D. Walker. Her son hadn't just used her insurance, he'd forged her authorization. Her breath caught, not from the COPD, but from something darker, heavier. Not even the tank's steady hiss could ground her. She grabbed her landline and dialed. 4 rings. Rachel Myers, came the clipped, alert voice on the other end. No nonsense. Just law. Miss Myers, Irene said. My name is Irene Walker. I've uncovered fraudulent medical charges under my name. The person responsible is my son. There was a pause, short, but not uncertain. How soon can you come in? Rachel Myers didn't work from a glossy high-rise. Her office was tucked above a bakery on the north side, where the scent of warm sourdough lingered just beneath the tang of toner ink and legal brief. She was younger than Irene expected. Mid-40s, sharp suit, sharper gaze. I looked over the records you emailed, Rachel said, gesturing for Irene to sit. What you're describing is a textbook case of insurance fraud. Elder exploitation, if we push it. It's messy, but clear. Irene slid the folder across the desk. Rachel opened it, flipping through the records with quick, trained fingers, highlighted lines, printouts, a spreadsheet, sorted by date and amount. You're organized, Rachel said, glancing up. I was an accountant for 32 years. I know how to follow money. Rachel's smile was fleeting but genuine. That's going to help. Courts like paperwork more than tears. Irene leaned forward, elbows firm on the edge of the desk. He mocked me in public. At dinner. About the oxygen tank. While he was using my insurance to build his own private comfort system at home. Rachel nodded once, slowly. Fraud is louder than insults, Mrs. Walker. And this, she tapped the binder, screams. Outside, a delivery truck rumbled by. Irene barely heard it. I want to press charges, she said, voice steady. You'll need more than a complaint, Rachel replied. You'll need to prove mental competence, financial independence, that you're aware of every detail and not being manipulated. I am, Irene said. And I have Nurse Tony Alvarez as a witness. He found the billing discrepancy with me. Perfect. I'll need a statement from him. And I'll need you to keep a running log. Every comment, every odd transaction, every insult that could point to manipulation. Rachel slid a fresh leather binder across the desk. Empty. Waiting. Start here. Back at home, Irene placed the binder on her kitchen table like it was a newborn. She smoothed the leather cover with care. The first page was already filled. Receipts, insurance statements, 2 printouts of Dylan's shipping address under her patient ID. The oxygen tank gave a small, satisfied hiss. Tony arrived just as the afternoon sun slipped through the blinds. You're in good hands with Rachel, he said, reviewing the document. She's a sword, Irene replied. I just needed someone to help sharpen mine. Tony chuckled, his breath fogging the edge of his glasses as he examined a signature line. Your lungs may be weak, he said, but your mind is steel. Irene looked up, eyes cool and focused. Steel cuts. The conference room was plain. No windows, no art, just 4 chairs, a metal table, and a single overhead light that made everything feel like a cross-examination. Rachel Myers closed the door with a soft click behind her and laid 2 legal pads on the table. One was for notes, the other for war. Let's start with what they'll hit first, Rachel said, tapping her pen. Mental competence. They'll claim confusion, dependency, stress. You're going to show them clarity, structure, and restraint. Irene nodded. She was dressed simply. Gray wool sweater, dark slacks, portable oxygen unit slung over her shoulder with the kind of casual elegance that said, I function, I survive, I am not broken. Rachel leaned forward. Why did you request the insurance records? Because the charges didn't align with my treatment plan, Irene said, voice low but firm. Why didn't you call your son before contacting an attorney? Because he wasn't a suspect. He was the crime, Rachel smirked. Good. Again. Cleaner this time. They went over it line by line. Irene didn't stumble. She didn't falter. But she didn't burn either. Her fury, like her illness, had narrowed into something tightly managed, deliberate and quiet. By the time the first hour passed, Rachel set her pen down. You're solid. But now comes the hard part. She opened a new folder. Inside, copies of Irene's notes. Handwritten, precise, quotes from Dylan, from Maya. Every mockery from the dinner. Every sneer. Every sideways smile that cut deeper than any insult. Read them out loud, Rachel said. Irene's hand hovered over the page. She looked down, breath thin, but even. You're not drinking, obviously, she began. This one makes you look like a walking machine. Rachel watched her, Unreadable. You don't need to be here if it's too much. Expired. Irene paused. The last one hung in the air longer than the rest. Her hand trembled, just barely. I need to say them without flinching, she said. Yes, Rachel replied. Because in the deposition, they'll try to make you flinch. They'll bait. You give them nothing but truth. Cold, clean truth. Irene stared at the page again. Then she pulled a second sheet closer. It was blank. She picked up her pen and began copying each line, word for word, like scripture. Gloria arrived later that evening, letting herself in with the spare key and a 6-pack of diet root beer tucked under her arm. How's the verbal judo going? She asked, settling into the chair across from Irene's binder-strewn table. Precise, Irene said. Dry. Legal. Good. The courtroom doesn't care about poetry, but it listens when truth sounds practiced. Irene glanced up. Practice. Humiliation becomes power when you repeat it with control, Gloria said. Say it enough, and it stops bleeding. It starts cutting. Irene smiled faintly. Rachel said the same thing. Different words. She's good. She's what Dylan wasn't ready for. Gloria leaned back. And you? I'm what he stopped seeing. That's his mistake. Later, Tony arrived with her portable unit and a new shoulder strap. Sleeker, padded, less medical. Try it, he said. She looped it over her arm, adjusted the tubing. The weight was better balanced. The tank sat tighter against her side. Less obvious, more mobile. You feel freer? Tony asked. I feel like I can move, she said. And I'm not the one who should be afraid of movement anymore. Tony adjusted the flow valve slightly. They'll underestimate you because of this thing, he said, nodding to the tank. I know, Irene said. But if they mocked my machine. She looked up at Rachel, now back at the table, cross-checking financial documentation with court prep notes. Then I'll mock theirs. The legal one. The one they think protects them. Rachel glanced over the top of her reading glasses, approving. Then let's make sure you've got your blade sharp. The courtroom wasn't grand. No oak paneling or towering ceilings, just aging linoleum, buzzing fluorescents, and the sound of folding chairs being adjusted by nervous hands. But to Irene, it felt sacred, consecrated by every breath she'd taken to get here. She sat at the petitioner's table beside Rachel, her oxygen tank resting quietly at her side, like a witness that wouldn't lie. Judge Ellen Carter entered from the side door, shoulders squared, lips pressed in a thin line. Her robe swayed slightly as she took her seat behind the elevated desk. Docket 8023A, the clerk announced. Walker versus Walker. Elder insurance dispute and request for forensic review. Irene didn't look at Dylan. Not when he walked in wearing a navy suit too crisp for a weekday. Not when he leaned over to whisper to his attorney. And not when Maya followed with her arms folded like she was bracing for wind. She did notice that Dylan didn't once glance her way. Miss Myers, Judge Carter said. You may proceed. Rachel stood. Your Honor, we have submitted documentation detailing unauthorized use of my client's medical insurance and social security number to order high-end oxygen equipment. This equipment was not delivered to Miss Walker's residence, but to her son's, Mr. Dylan Walker, where it was installed for personal comfort. Dylan's attorney, a slick, polished man named Jeffrey Barnes, rose immediately. We dispute the characterization. Mr. Walker asserts that his mother was under physical and cognitive distress at the time and verbally authorized the purchases for emergency redundancy. She may have forgotten or misunderstood. The word forgotten hung in the room like cheap cologne. Rachel didn't blink. We'll let the documents speak. She handed the bailiff a thick stack of printed statements, all clipped neatly into color-coded tabs. The judge flipped through them with practiced speed. Rachel continued. You'll see multiple shipments billed under Ms. Walker's insurance account, premium Ever Air units, accessory filters, service calls, all sent to 11822 Grover Lane. That is not Miss Walker's residence. Judge Carter's eyes narrowed slightly. That's your address, Mr. Walker? Dylan shifted. Yes, but... Irene stood. Rachel turned, surprised. Your Honor, if I may speak? The judge studied her, then nodded. Proceed, Ms. Walker. Irene steadied herself. No shaking, no trembling. Her voice came low but clear. I know what I saw. I went to my son's house last month. He didn't know I was coming. Maya had posted photos online of their remodeled basement. I noticed the oxygen unit in the background. My model. I heard it before I saw it. The hiss. Same rhythm as mine. My machine. Just relocated. Dylan's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't forget anything. Irene continued. I didn't misunderstand. I never gave consent. He mocked me at dinner, called me a walking machine, said I didn't need to be out in public with my equipment, but he was the one using my identity to outfit his home with the very thing he said made me an embarrassment. Maya leaned toward Dylan. You said this wouldn't happen, she hissed. Silence, please, Judge Carter said sharply. Rachel stepped back in. Miss Walker has also produced bank statements confirming supplemental copays charged to her Social Security deposit account, accounts with no login from her devices, but frequent logins from IP addresses registered to Mr. Walker's home. She handed another folder to the judge. There was a long, heavy pause as pages turned. Finally, Judge Carter looked up. I'm ordering an immediate fraud investigation and forensic audit, she said. We will determine the extent of financial misuse. Until that audit is complete, Mr. Walker is to cease any use or withdrawal from accounts affiliated with Ms. Walker's medical or insurance record. Dylan's lawyer turned toward him. You didn't mention Social Security access. I didn't think she'd dig this deep, Dylan snapped under his breath. But Irene heard it. She reached down, tightened the strap on her tank, and stood straighter. As the bailiff approached to collect final exhibits, Maya leaned in again, quieter this time, angrier. You said this was under control. It was. Well, it's not anymore. The oxygen tank hissed in rhythm with Irene's breath. Rachel leaned over. That was bold, she whispered. I'm not a witness anymore, Irene replied. I'm the prosecution. The day after the courtroom hearing, Irene's name was already in someone else's mouth. Not the press. Not yet. Her son's. She's confused all the time, Dylan said on a muted Zoom call, half shielded by his office blinds. Forgetful. Doesn't remember what she signs. She means well, but… He trailed off, let his assistant fill in the silence with a sympathetic head tilt. It wasn't a lie. Not quite. That made it worse. Across the city, Irene's world remained quiet, filled with the whisper of paper and the gentle purr of her oxygen. But Gloria, ever vigilant, texted a screenshot mid-morning. Check Maya's Instagram story. Also, breathe deeply before you do. Irene didn't have Instagram, but Gloria did, and Gloria kept receipts. The story was a selfie. Maya, all false eyelashes and perfectly arched brows, sitting in her Audi with a venti iced latte held up like a trophy. The caption scrawled across the bottom in playful pink font. Machines were invented to help the elderly, not turn them into prosecutors. Irene stared at the screen. It wasn't rage she felt. It was clarity. The kind of clarity that came not from oxygen, but from oxygen denied. She tapped her portable tank once, not for reassurance, for rhythm. Rachel was already drafting a harassment complaint by the time Irene called. She's skating the line between mockery and legal intimidation, Rachel said. But the digital footprint is gold. We'll attach it to our response. And Dylan? Irene asked. Word is he's been making quiet calls, trying to reframe the narrative as concern for your mental health. Elder guardianship talk. He's planting seeds Irene's breath caught. Not fear. Strategy. Then we need fertilizer of our own. That afternoon, Irene called the neighborhood library. Do you still run that after-school reading program? She asked. Yes, ma'am, said the young woman on the other end. We meet twice a week, ages 6 through 11. I'd like to volunteer, Irene said. I used to tutor for the IRS Employee Literacy Initiative. I still remember phonics drills better than my wedding vows. The woman laughed. We'd love to have you. She showed up Thursday in a soft cream cardigan and comfortable slacks, her tank tucked neatly into a patterned canvas bag. The children didn't stare at the tubing. They stared at her stories. She read Charlotte's Web with the kind of reverence that only comes from years of knowing exactly what it means. To feel small, trapped, but not beaten. When one of the girls asked if the machine made her talk like a robot, Irene smiled gently. No, sweetheart. It just helps me speak longer, and she did. Patiently, warmly, without once needing to pause for breath. A volunteer took photos for the library's Facebook page. 2 days later, they appeared on the feed. Miss Irene Walker, retired accountant and our newest volunteer, helping little minds grow strong, one chapter at a time. The post had 142 likes and counting. Gloria texted her again. Narrative shift in motion. Let's write it. Also, your hair looked fire in that photo. Irene replied with a smile emoji, then sent the post to Rachel. Rachel's response came seconds later. This makes it nearly impossible for them to pursue incompetency. We'll lean in. Hard. But the true payoff came that Sunday. Maya posted a filtered selfie at brunch. Caption: some people need machines to breathe. Others need attention to live. I know which I prefer. This time, it didn't go unchecked. A woman Irene didn't know, someone from the library, commented, "You're mocking your own mother-in-law? The woman volunteering with our kids while on oxygen?" Another user followed, "Some of us have to breathe to survive. You, apparently, just exhale toxicity." By nightfall, Maya had locked her account. The hospital's third-floor administrative wing smelled like citrus disinfectant and burnt coffee. Not the kind of place you'd expect betrayal to creep in, but that's exactly where Dylan showed up. Smiling too wide, cufflinks glinting under fluorescent lights, holding a manila envelope like it was just another form in a bureaucratic maze. "Hey," he said to the front desk clerk, who'd just returned from lunch. "I'm here about my mother's file." Irene Walker. "She's had some cognitive assessments, probably outdated. I'd like to get those refreshed." Rebecca, the clerk, didn't smile. She recognized the name, knew the file. "We can't release health documentation without a HIPAA authorization." "Oh, totally get that," Dylan said, leaning in conspiratorially. "I just need one note, reworded, the fully competent part. I mean, she's had some episodes recently. You'd be doing her a favor, really." He slid the envelope across the desk. Rebecca didn't touch it. "You're asking me to alter a federal medical record," she said, voice even. Dylan chuckled, like they were old friends playing a prank. "Come on, it's just wording. Doesn't hurt anyone," but the look on her face didn't change. He left 10 minutes later, envelope untouched. 2 hours later, Rachel's phone rang. She did the right thing, Rachel told Irene, pacing her office, filed an internal report, then called hospital legal. "They're not taking it lightly." Irene sat across from her, spine straight as rebar. "So he's trying to destroy my capacity. Not in court, through back doors. They're scared," Rachel said. "This isn't defense. This is desperation." Irene took a long inhale from her portable unit. The hiss, steady and slow, didn't betray the spike in her heart rate. "I want a statement, from Tony." And Dr. Patel. Rachel nodded. "Already sent the request. You'll have them in 48 hours. Tony arrived the next morning with a soft knock and a document folder tucked under his arm. "This is from me," he said, setting it on the table. "And this is from Dr. Patel." He dictated it himself. Irene flipped it open. Cognitive function, fully intact. Memory, reasoning, orientation, age-appropriate and unimpaired. Patient operates and maintains oxygen equipment without supervision. Independent in daily tasks. High mental acuity noted. Tony pointed to the final paragraph. Patient demonstrates full legal and medical competence. No indication of diminished capacity. She exhaled, but not in relief, in precision. "This ends that angle," Tony said. "No," Irene replied, voice low. "This buries it." She picked up the affidavit, slid it into her growing binder, and gently smoothed the page like sealing a coffin. That night, Gloria came over with blueberry muffins and the latest gossip. "So guess what my friend at City Clerks just told me?" she asked, plopping down on the couch. "What?" "Dylan's been calling around, asking if there's a way to challenge mental competency in family court pre-trial." Before fraud even hits the bench, Irene blinked. "He wants to shut me up before he gets nailed." "Exactly. But here's the best part." Gloria leaned in. "Everyone sees it now. They're talking. Whispers in the hallways. He's not clever. He's cornered." Irene didn't smile, but her posture shifted. "Relax, just a little." "You're not gasping anymore," Gloria said, almost in awe. Irene looked down at her, then back at her friend. "No," she said. "But he is." 2 days later, Rachel marched into the clerk's office with a red folder and a fire behind her eyes. "Emergency motion for judicial sanctions," she said. "Attempted tampering of medical records. Witness report attached. Will be requesting courtroom review under oath." The clerk nodded, stamped the top page, and slid it into the bin for Judge Carter's docket. Rachel's office was a war room now. No more polite folders or tidy file stacks. The table was covered in binders. Red, black, navy. Sticky notes stuck out like feathers in a warrior's headdress. Rachel moved between piles with the grace of someone who had done this before, but never with a client like Irene. Binder 1, Rachel said, sliding it across. Medical. Every test, statement, and signed affidavit. 2. Financial records, bank withdrawals, the insurance audit, all the digital breadcrumbs Dylan didn't think to erase. 3. Harassment and character defamation, online posts, screenshots, witness notes. Everything Maya said that proved intent to humiliate Irene opened each binder slowly, fingertips grazing the page edges like she was handling something ancient and powerful. It was her life, compressed into legal weapons. She'd never imagined needing this kind of armor at 69, but now that it was here, she wore it like it had always been hers. Do not let your voice quiver, Rachel said, flipping to a mock cross-examination sheet. Don't let your breathing pace change when they say you're forgetful. You answer like an accountant during an audit. Clean, exact, merciless. Irene nodded. Rachel continued, reading from a typed page. Would you consider your memory reliable, Ms. Walker? Yes. Have you ever failed to administer your oxygen properly? No. Are you emotionally unstable due to the stress of your diagnosis? Irene looked up. I'm not unstable. I'm focused. And focus looks like fury to people who can't stomach accountability. Rachel paused, then smiled. That's going in your deposition. Later that afternoon, Tony arrived in his usual Navy scrubs, binder in hand and weariness under his eyes. But when he saw Irene, he straightened. I brought my witness summary, he said. Sworn and notarized. Anything unexpected? Rachel asked. No, only the truth. I supervised her care. I monitored her cognition. I reviewed her vitals weekly. She's lucid, sharp, never missed a dosage or an appointment. If they want to test her, let them. She'll outscore most judges. He turned to Irene. They'll see it. She nodded. Let them. That evening, Gloria let herself in with the quiet efficiency of someone who didn't need permission. She carried a pair of low-block heels in a shopping bag. Don't even argue, she said, setting them on the table. They're orthopedic, but not hideous. You need to walk into court like a woman who's not about to fall over. Irene raised an eyebrow. And if I fall over anyway? Then you fall like a hammer, not like glass. They spent an hour practicing, steps from the door to the kitchen, posture corrected, breathing timed. Gloria placed a sheet of paper on the floor with bench written in red Sharpie. Stop there. Look ahead. Don't glance down. Don't adjust the tubing unless it's truly necessary. That tank isn't your leash, it's your sword. By the fourth round, Irene's movements were fluid. Her grip on the portable unit wasn't tentative anymore. It was deliberate, claiming space. Later, Irene sat alone at the dining table, the tank humming beside her, a silent but loyal companion. She unzipped the battery compartment and checked the gauge. Fully charged. She switched it off for a moment and listened. No noise, just stillness. A kind of stillness she hadn't known in months. Then she flicked it back on, and the soft exhale. My machine is my ally, she whispered into the silence. Not my weakness. She reached for her phone and typed a single line to Rachel. I'm ready. The courtroom was colder than Irene remembered. Or maybe it was just quieter. Either way, it was the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. Judge Ellen Carter stepped onto the bench promptly at 9 a.m., robe flowing behind her like a gavel made of fabric. This hearing will determine whether sufficient grounds exist for civil fraud and elder abuse charges to proceed to trial, she said. Her voice echoed against the paneled walls, measured, unflinching. Irene sat to Rachel's left, her binders stacked neatly on the table, portable tank at her side, a quiet sentinel. Across the aisle, Dylan sat too stiffly. Maya didn't look at anyone. Jeffrey Barnes, Dylan's lawyer, wore a thin smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Rachel stood. Your Honor, we'll begin by addressing the claim that my client is mentally unfit to assess or report fraudulent activity. We will then present corroborating financial evidence and witness testimony. Judge Carter nodded. Proceed. Jeffrey was up first, moving with oily ease. Your Honor, my client would like to start by expressing his concern, not outrage, for his mother's well-being. Recent behavior suggests confusion, paranoia, and susceptibility to manipulation. Irene's fingers brushed the edge of her binder, not in anger, impatient. She's always been fiercely independent, Jeffrey continued, But post-diagnosis, her judgment has, well, suffered. My client didn't exploit her. He protected her. Rachel didn't even look at him when she stood. We'd like to call our first witness, Nurse Tony Alvarez. Tony stepped forward in his pressed scrubs, ID badge visible, voice calm. I've provided care for Miss Walker for 18 months, he began. During that time, she has demonstrated full comprehension of her care, plan, insurance process, billing codes, and treatment expectations. Do you consider her cognitively impaired in any way? Rachel asked. No, quite the opposite. She questioned a billing discrepancy I missed. She found the fraud before I did. Rachel nodded. Thank you. Judge Carter raised an eyebrow at Dylan. Did you inform your mother about the purchases made through her insurance account? Dylan shifted. She gave verbal approval. Was that documented? There was a pause. No. Jeffrey cut in quickly, but Rachel was already moving. Miss Walker, please submit Exhibit A. Irene stood. No stumble, no shake. She slid the binder across the table to the bailiff, the sound of the leather on wood louder than any objection. Inside, every insurance claim, signature mismatch, delivery record, all highlighted, all dated, all traced. Judge Carter flipped through the binder silently for nearly a minute before setting it down. Your son's name appears as the recipient on over a dozen claims, she said, including for equipment not prescribed to you. Correct, Irene replied. One of the units is in his home office. I recognize the serial number from my supply invoice. Jeffrey cleared his throat. If I may, Rachel cut him off. Your Honor, our next witness is Janelle Mercer, manager at Linkswell Medical Supply. A woman in her 40s stepped forward, smart blazer, clutching a folder, unshaken. I manage inventory and retail at Linkswell, she said. About 7 months ago, I processed 3 high-end oxygen unit orders for Dylan Walker. He paid supplemental charges using his mother's secondary insurance. I flagged it to our billing team. It looked suspicious. Judge Carter looked over her glasses. And the outcome of that flag? Billing said the payments cleared, but the account name, Miss Irene Walker, was inconsistent with the delivery signature. Signed by Mr. Walker once. The other 2 were left blank. Maya's face flushed red. Dylan looked like he'd forgotten how to blink. Rachel stepped forward one last time. Your Honor, we are requesting a court-ordered forensic audit of all financial transactions tied to Ms. Walker's insurance, Social Security, and discretionary medical accounts. Dating back 2 years, Judge Carter didn't hesitate. So ordered. It took 2 weeks for the forensic audit to come through. Irene spent every one of those days preparing as if the war hadn't already begun, checking receipts, tracking payments, cross-referencing the spiral-bound printout the auditors had couriered over in a sealed envelope. She didn't ask Rachel what was in it. She wanted to hear it with everyone else. Judge Carter called court back to session at 9:05 a.m. sharp. Her gavel echoed once, then silent. Rachel stood. Your Honor, pursuant to your order, the court-appointed audit team has completed a full financial review of Ms. Walker's Medicare Advantage plan, her Social Security-linked direct deposits, and supplemental insurance policy usage. She held up the folder like a scalpel. The results are revealing. Rachel handed a copy to the clerk, who delivered it to Judge Carter. Summary findings, please, the judge said, eyes already scanning the first few pages. Rachel cleared her throat. Over a span of 22 months, Mr. Dylan Walker accessed or redirected $58,041.67 of his mother's federal and private benefit. This included medical supply fraud, bank transfers labeled as care reimbursements, and invoices for home improvement services that, according to attached contractor statements, were never performed at Ms. Walker's address. Judge Carter's head lifted slowly. Excuse me, home improvement? Yes, Your Honor, Rachel said, flipping a page. A sunroom, upgraded kitchen ventilation, surround sound system, and recessed lighting, all installed at 11,822 Grover Lane. Paid through accounts registered to Irene Walker. Dylan flinched. Maya froze, mouth slightly open. Rachel continued. We have 5 vendor receipts, all signed by Mr. Walker. All paid by accounts tied to Miss Walker's Social Security number. Not a single modification or enhancement was made to Miss Walker's actual residence. Judge Carter raised an eyebrow. So the oxygen unit was only the tip of the iceberg. Correct. A silence fell over the courtroom. one of those silences that pressed in on the ribs. Jeffrey Barnes shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his collar. Your Honor, my client asserts that all renovations were intended to provide an accessible living space should Ms. Walker move in. She wasn't invited, Irene said, voice cutting clean through the air. Judge Carter looked up. She was never consulted, Rachel added. Never informed. Never visited that home during or after the work. We have time-stamped correspondence confirming she hadn't stepped foot in that property for over a year. Maya finally found her voice. I didn't know. I thought the money came from the bonus. Dylan told me it was all from his firm. Rachel slid a glossy image across the table. This is the contractor's check. Look at the payer line. Maya stared at the name. Irene Walker. She covered her mouth. You have to believe me, she began. Judge Carter raised a single hand. Mrs. Walker is not obligated to believe anyone. This is her hearing. Irene sat stone still. Her portable tank hummed like background music now, no longer center stage. She wore her stillness like armor, gaze fixed. She had nothing left to prove. The paper did it for her. Judge Carter leaned forward. Miss Myers, based on the results of the audit and corroborating testimony, the court is prepared to rule on immediate civil penalty and recommend formal criminal charges. I am ordering full restitution of the stolen amount and freezing Mr. Walker's access to any accounts linked to Miss Walker, retroactive to the start of the fraud. Additionally, I am referring this case to the state attorney's office for potential felony prosecution. Jeffrey Barnes lowered his head slightly, his confidence now a puddle under his patent leather shoes. Dylan opened his mouth, then closed it again. Maya sat silently, a single tear rolling down her cheek. Irene reached for her water glass, sipped once, and set it down with grace. Only Gloria caught the glint in her eye. As the gavel echoed once more, signaling the close of the hearing, Gloria leaned toward her and whispered. That audit hit like a nuke. Irene didn't look away from Dylan. She simply whispered back, his machine is crumbling. The courthouse steps were slick with the kind of late fall drizzle that soaked coats, but not resolve. Irene stood beneath the awning, her tank humming faintly beside her like a loyal second breath. The hearing had ended hours ago, but she wasn't in a hurry to leave. Not yet. Rachel had gone back inside to file the final batch of forms. Gloria had gone to get the car. And Irene, she waited. She knew he'd come. Footsteps behind her. Not fast, not loud, just deliberate. Mom. She didn't turn around. Just watched the mist rise off the parking lot like the ghost of something long dead. Please, can we talk? Now she turned. Dylan stood 3 steps down, his suit damp at the collar, hair clinging to his forehead. His eyes were bloodshot, but not from grief, from pressure, from panic. I never meant for it to go this far, he said quickly. I thought it was just extra. You weren't using it. The benefits, the accounts, and Maya. She kept pushing for upgrades. You forged my name, Irene said. He winced. You accessed my social security. You lied under oath. You mocked me in public while living off the very thing you said made me pathetic. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did, she cut in. You meant all of it. You just didn't think I'd still be breathing when the dust settled. Rain pattered between them, soft as static. He stepped closer. Too close. She manipulated me, he said, voice cracking. Maya. She wanted the house redone. She didn't care how. She said if I didn't fix the den, she'd leave. Said I was pathetic for not getting promoted. Said if I didn't act like a man, I wasn't one. Irene studied him. The man in front of her wasn't the son she remembered holding against her chest in a hospital room nearly 42 years ago. This one was older, heavier with the weight of lies and choices that calcified into cowardice. She didn't hold the pen, Dylan, Irene said quietly. You did. He looked up, rain dripping from his lashes. What do you want from me? What do you need me to say? I don't need anything from you anymore, she said. That's what you never understood. His face broke, something between horror and revelation. She leaned in just enough that only he could hear her. You mocked my machine, she whispered. I turned off yours. She stepped back, turned, and walked away. Each footfall steady on the courthouse stone, every breath assisted but unburdened. He didn't follow. Inside, Rachel was waiting with 2 manila folders and a fresh motion form. He tried to intercept you? She asked, already writing. Irene nodded once, cornered, begging. Blamed his wife. Of course he did. Rachel slipped the complaint paperwork into her bag. This goes straight to the state attorney's office. Criminal charges incoming. Irene didn't blink. Good. Rachel paused. Most people would hesitate. I'm not most people, Irene said. Not anymore. Out front, Gloria pulled up in Irene's sedan, one hand tapping the wheel to a Motown playlist that had played the entire drive. Irene climbed in slowly, deliberately, no stumbles. Gloria watched her from the driver's seat, eyes glassy. You did it. Irene didn't answer. She just rolled down the window and let the cold air hit her face. For the first time in months, her breath came easy. Not because of the machine, but because she knew the weight was no longer hers to carry. She'd handed it back, piece by piece, in the shape of evidence. The courtroom looked different with 12 strangers watching. The jury sat in the box, eyes sweeping the room with a curiosity that hadn't yet hardened into judgment, but would. Irene could feel it. The way they glanced between her and Dylan. The way their pens hovered over legal pads like weapons waiting for orders. Judge Carter opened proceedings briskly. This trial concerns allegations of elder financial fraud, identity misuse, and medical benefits exploitation. Jury will determine intent and liability. The bailiff swore in the first witness. The prosecution began with clarity. Ladies and gentlemen, the assistant district attorney said, voice like glass on concrete, what you'll hear in this trial is simple. A son saw an opportunity, not to care for his mother, but to capitalize on her. And he didn't just steal money, he stole breath. Rachel sat beside Irene, posture sharp. Her folders were closed. She'd done her work already. Across the aisle, Dylan's new lawyer, a younger, visibly nervous public defender, rose slowly. Jeffrey Barnes had jumped ship as soon as the criminal charges landed. There is no doubt money was used improperly, he admitted. But this case isn't about criminal intent. It's about a family trying to care for a parent and making human mistakes in the process. Irene said nothing. The jury wasn't hers to impress. She just needed them to listen. Her turn came late on the first day. The ADA guided her gently. Can you tell us your name and age, miss? Walker? Irene Walker. 69. Occupation? Retired accountant. 32 years with the IRS. Were you aware that your son was using your medical benefits to order luxury equipment? No. Were you aware that your Social Security was being routed to vendors for his home renovations? No. Her voice didn't crack. Her hands didn't shake. Were you aware your son submitted authorization under your name for oxygen support units not delivered to your home? I became aware when I heard my machine hissing, in a room I'd never entered. A beat. And how did that feel? Like someone had borrowed my breath. Without asking, gasps from the jury were silent, but visible. One woman's eyes welled. One man leaned forward. They didn't see a frail victim. They saw a witness holding her ground with dignity. Tony testified next. He wore his scrubs again. Symbolic. Honest. She handles her oxygen system better than half the nurses I've trained, he said flatly. And when we caught the billing discrepancy, she spotted the fraud pattern before I did. And her mental clarity? Sharper than mine on most days. Gloria followed. She's always known what she was doing, even when people tried to convince her otherwise. That's why this hurt so much. It wasn't just stealing money, it was trying to convince her she didn't see it happen. Then came Maya. Her defense team had tried to shield her, but she'd been listed as a witness on the purchase record, and the subpoena stuck. She looked different now, hair pulled back tight, no makeup, a stiff blazer that didn't belong to her. Rachel did the question. Mrs. Walker, she began, did you knowingly authorize any medical equipment using Irene Walker's insurance account? I didn't handle the paperwork. Dylan said he had it under control. But the packages were delivered to your home? Yes. Did you ever ask where they came from? I assumed. Maya hesitated. I trusted him. Rachel walked forward slowly. Did you post this? She asked, holding up a printout. Some people need machines to breathe. Others need attention to live. I know which I prefer. Maya's face crumpled. Yes. And did you know the machine you were mocking was purchased with stolen benefits? From the woman you were mocking? A long pause, then a whisper. No. The courtroom was quiet, but the jury wasn't still. They shifted, scribbled. One woman's jaw clenched visibly. The courtroom was breathless. Even the air felt thinner, like the building itself had held its lungs in suspense. Judge Carter returned from chambers at 4:32 p.m., the jury having delivered their verdict just minutes before. A hush swept the gallery, not out of fear, but reverence. Everyone knew they were about to witness the kind of justice that doesn't make headlines, but should. "Will the defendant please rise?" Judge Carter said, her tone absolute. Dylan stood. So did Irene. Not for him. For herself? The jury foreman, a woman in her 60s with silver braids and accountant eyes, unfolded the paper slowly. Her voice was measured, flat, but heavy. "On count 1, felony insurance fraud, we find the defendant, Dylan Walker, guilty." Dylan's head jerked slightly, like he hadn't fully believed it was possible. "On count 2, misuse of federal Social Security funds, guilty." His knees buckled slightly. "On count 3, elder financial abuse, guilty." There was no air left to breathe. Judge Carter adjusted her glasses. "This court acknowledges the jury's unanimous findings and hereby sentences Dylan Walker to the following: full restitution of $58,041.67 to Ms. Irene Walker, plus all accrued legal fees. Additionally, Mr. Walker is barred permanently from controlling, accessing, or managing any of Ms. Walker's financial, medical, or personal affairs, including those of any estate or inheritance." She glanced over at Maya. "Mrs. Maya Walker, based on your complicity in benefit misuse and digital harassment, you will share joint liability in the restitution amount and are hereby issued a separate civil judgment to be resolved under collections review." Maya gasped. Her lawyer reached out to steady her, but she shook him off. Her face a blank page smeared with disbelief. Then the judge turned to Irene. "Miss Walker, this court recognizes your resilience, clarity, and commitment to truth. Despite manipulation and prolonged intimidation, you are awarded full restitution, damages, and protection. Effective immediately, a no-contact order will be issued against Dylan Walker. Violation of said order will constitute contempt of court." Rachel placed a gentle hand on Irene's arm. The oxygen tank beside her clicked once, then hissed, measured, steady, the same rhythm she had carried through all of it. Dylan turned toward the judge, pale and trembling. This is my life," he said. Judge Carter didn't blink. "You should have considered that before you stole hers." Dylan collapsed into the chair behind him, face slack, breath catching like a child denied a toy he thought would always be his. There was no applause, just silence, the kind of silence that says, "Done." Irene looked at him, not with pity, not with vengeance, just presence. He had erased her from the ledgers. She'd rewritten every line. Rachel leaned in. "Want to say something?" Irene stepped forward, calm, clear, a breath drawn and released. She looked directly at her son, then down at her machine, then back at him. Machine turned off. Outside, the courthouse doors opened like a final chapter. Sunlight spilled onto the concrete. Irene stood at the top of the steps, tank quietly humming beside her, the leather strap balanced across her shoulder like a war medal. Gloria approached with tears in her eyes and the kind of pride that didn't need words. She hugged her, brief and firm. "You didn't just survive this," Gloria said softly. "You rewrote the ending." Irene gave a single nod. She looked out at the crowd. Reporters, gathering, bystanders murmuring, one juror wiping their eyes, and saw what she hadn't seen in months. No one was looking at the machine anymore. They were looking at her. The newspaper hit doorsteps just after 6 a.m., still damp from the press. "Mother outsmarts son in fraud case. Local woman wins landmark elder abuse trial." The headline ran above the fold in bold serif, paired with a photo of Irene exiting the courthouse, shoulders squared, oxygen tank slung like a sash, eyes forward. Gloria sent a snapshot of the front page before sunrise. "You're print famous, babe." And no one even mentioned the tubing. By noon, her front porch was a garden. Roses, irises, daisies in mason jars. Even someone's homemade banana bread wrapped in foil and ribbon, labeled only, "Thank you for not being quiet." A card from the librarian staff read, "For teaching kids how to read, and grown men what happens when you steal from a woman with receipts." Irene arranged the flowers slowly, carefully. Her breathing remained steady, each inhale a full one, unhurried. The tank sat at her feet, humming not like a machine, but like applause. That night, Betty hosted dinner. Not just dinner, a celebration. "Just family," she said. Irene raised a brow. Define family. People who bring pie and never forged your signature. Gloria was already stirring a pot of gumbo. Rachel arrived fashionably late with a bottle of sparkling cider and a flash drive containing the final case summary, sealed and filed. I just came from a seminar, she said, setting down her briefcase. They mentioned your case without naming you. You're a case study now. Is that good or bad? Irene asked. Depends, Rachel said, popping the cork. If you're the fraudster, it's bad. If you're you, it's legend. They toasted with mismatched glasses and paper plates, shrimp gumbo, garlic knots, and Betty's famous peach cobbler bubbling over the edges like it didn't care about portion control. It was the first time in months Irene didn't feel like she had to defend her breath or her presence. When Tony arrived near the end of dessert, he held no files, just a padded case. I figured it was time, he said, placing it in her lap. Inside, a sleek, upgraded oxygen concentrator. Graphite gray. Lighter, quieter. Slim straps, custom fit. Battery lasts 12 hours, he said. No hum over 40 decibels. It adjusts flow automatically when you move or rest. Irene ran a hand along its edge. Does it whistle courtroom victory music? She asked dryly. No, he said. But it won't flinch under pressure. She smiled and fitted the new strap over her shoulder. The unit whirred to life, subtle, almost imperceptible. She exhaled, then turned to Rachel. I'd like to revise my will. Clean copy. Legal teeth. Rachel nodded. Already have a draft. Made it airtight. Good, Irene said. No more guessing. No more loopholes. If I die, it'll be on my terms, not someone else's spreadsheet. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's what winning looks like. The night wound down with old Motown on the record player and Betty insisting everyone take leftovers. Irene lingered near the doorway, watching the light spill across the hardwood floor. Simple, unbroken. Before Gloria left, she turned back and said, You know what I keep thinking? What? That sound. She nodded toward the machine. Used to scare you. Irene looked down at the soft purr of the concentrator. Familiar, gentle, present. It doesn't anymore, she said. She adjusted the strap across her shoulder and faced the window, watching headlights pass on the street below. This sound is life, Irene whispered. Not shame. The ballroom ceiling glittered with recessed lighting and soft chandeliers, but Irene didn't look up. She didn't need stage lights to feel seen anymore. The National Elder Rights and Justice Conference had booked her under the title Keynote Survivor Speaker, a phrase that made her wince until she saw the room. Hundreds of chairs, full. Aisles packed with attorneys, advocates, caregivers, survivors. And at the far left, in the front row, Gloria in a red scarf, tissues clutched tightly, Rachel beside her in navy slacks, and a posture that still looked like litigation ready. Tony off to the side, leaning against the wall, arms folded, nodding once when she caught his eye. Irene stepped up to the podium, her oxygen concentrator tucked neatly at her hip, near silent now, almost poetic. The room went quiet. She took one breath, steady. 3 years ago, I was humiliated over dinner, she began, by my son. No preamble, no hedging. The silence didn't stiffen. It leaned in. He mocked my machine, said I looked like I shouldn't be in public, called me expired, all while using my identity to finance his life upgrades. Oxygen tank, appliances, renovation. He didn't steal my money. He stole my breath. And then he laughed. She paused. Let the words land. I didn't raise my voice. I raised receipts. I didn't yell. I documented. I didn't threaten. I prepared. Rachel smiled faintly, chin lifted. Gloria's lip trembled. People told me not to make waves. That family comes first. That maybe I was confused. That oxygen dependency meant mental decline. That I should be grateful anyone visited me at all. She leaned forward. And now? He can't visit. Not legally. Not financially. Not even digitally. Laughter rippled. Not loud. Not mocking. Empowered. I'm not sharing this for sympathy. I'm sharing this because elder abuse isn't just bruises or stolen pills. Sometimes it's paper, screenshots, mismatched signatures, passwords changed behind your back. The crowd nodded, visibly, physically. You don't have to scream to be loud. You don't need perfect lungs to make a courtroom hear you. And sometimes, your quietest breath, your last patient inhale, is the one that knocks the building down. Tony closed his eyes. Irene continued. My oxygen machine saved me, not just by keeping me alive, but by reminding me, I'm not done yet. The sound that once embarrassed me in restaurants became my rhythm, my metronome for war. She took a breath, then another. And when the judge read the verdict, and I heard my name next to the words, full restitution, permanent protection, total exoneration, I realized something. She looked out across the room, at the dozens rising from their chairs now, one by one, without cue. My machine wasn't weakness, it was warning. The crowd stood fully now. Applause thundered. Some clapped with both hands, some wiped eyes, some held phones to record the end of the speech they'd never forget. Rachel clapped once, then twice, then folded her hands in quiet awe. Gloria had stopped pretending not to cry. Irene let it swell. She didn't bow. She didn't wave. She stepped back, let the applause ride its full arc, then walked slowly off stage, Tank whispering at her side like punctuation on a sentence she'd spent a year building. As she reached the wings, a young woman, maybe 30, maybe less, grabbed her hand. My dad used to say I was overreacting, she whispered. Thank you for proving I wasn't. Irene nodded once. You weren't. She met Gloria at the exit. I'm glad I came, Irene said. You didn't just come, Gloria whispered. You rewrote the whole damn page. Outside the wind was soft, the evening quiet. Irene adjusted the strap on her concentrator, lifted her chin, and kept walking.